Welcome to Thronefall. This is a very simple strategy game, and I have just completed the first, just this like an intro level to teach you the game, and we're gonna just jump right in. Now I'm playing, if you can't tell, I'm actually playing on a controller, which will be, which will be very interesting, being that I don't play almost any controllers games, so this will be interesting. But yeah, let's get right into this and see. I don't know if there's any benefit to not getting a perk, so let's try the perks. Might as well. Actually, it probably is less, so let's remove our perks and let's take down our towers as well, so we only have one perk to deal with. Let's get in. Alright. Bear with me if these controls are a little rough, because they will likely be a little rough. But we'll see. We'll try to make the most out of this. So this should be a pretty chill game for us, because I was trying to find a game today that I thought would be nice and easy for us to kind of just play and maybe have a little bit of time to kind of chat and stuff, kind of just about whatever. Sorry, I'm still getting used to the controls. So yeah, let me know what you guys think of these, kind of a little bit more of a relaxed kind of a feel comparatively. But yeah, I mean, obviously still going to be focusing a lot on the gameplay, but wanting to still have a lot more kind of fun and chill time, kind of just talking and chat about stuff. There is a YouTuber, I believe his channel's name is Flow State. He actually does, ironically, actually does like Minecraft stuff, but all throughout it, he kind of just chats and just hangs out. And I don't know, it's just kind of a cool, let's do this. Kind of just a cool way to just talk with people. And it just seems like a kind of a fun, different way to kind of deal with, you know, kind of, it's almost like a podcast style thing where you want to, kind of just chat instead of like, or I should say more of like a podcast more than it is anything else. And I think that's kind of a cool way to look at things. And I don't know, it's just something that I really enjoy the kind of the feel of, and it just feels more, I don't know, more personal and just a little more engaging. And it's something that hopefully for you guys feel like you can just kind of listen to as you're kind of going about throughout your day. You don't have to worry about, you know, really paying attention to the gameplay or anything like that. You can kind of just chill. But yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about that and kind of the feel of this, because obviously I am still going to be doing a lot of this. I'm going to be doing a lot of just kind of straight up normal gameplay that's not super exciting. But hoping still though to be able to do some gameplay that's kind of just, yeah, talking. And one of those things that I was actually kind of thinking about when kind of thinking about like, what would I want to talk about? And one of those things that came to mind is actually kind of a little bit of a silly thing, or not silly thing, but something that I think is rather important, and that is kind of the idea of actually legacy. Which, I mean, might seem like a little bit of a heavy topic to talk about just playing this little game, but I think something that I was taking a class in college a few years ago. For those who don't know, I just graduated college. Come on, guys. And And we were talking about this idea of like what legacy means, and I had some classmates of mine who were expressing the idea of like, oh, legacy doesn't really like matter to us. Like we shouldn't be worried about that. We should focus a lot more on, you know, other things that, you know, matter more to us. Like kind of like what we're doing here and right now. And like, I don't know, like I get what they're saying. It's all about, you know, trying to better understand like your direct surroundings. So you might say, oh, like I don't want to focus on legacy because I want to focus a lot more on the ideas of kind of like what I'm doing in my community. And I mean, I understand that. I really do. I'm not trying to like knock that idea of, you know, being within your community, but I think it's much more important than people realize, this idea of like legacy. And I think something that we need to focus on as not just like, oh, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Is because I think when you're focused a little bit more upon your legacy, you're focused more upon kind of what you're doing day to day and the footprint that you, or not necessarily the footprints that you leave behind, but I guess so, you know, because sure, if you want to kind of just live your life doing, you know, I don't know, who knows what, kind of just living and feeling like I want every day to feel just like a good day for us. And sure, that's a fine ideal to have, but I think it's far more admirable to think, hey, when I die, when life is all done for me and I die, what do I want to be remembered by? And I think the reason that's so important is because that then kind of forces you to really think about, hey, what do I want from life? What do I want to be remembered as? And something I was talking with a friend of mine, really good friend of mine, who is kind of trying to figure out what he's going to do in his professional life, and specifically like career stuff. And I think something that we were talking about is just like, hey, like what you want from your career is so dependent on what you want your goal in life to be and what you want your legacy to be. And I think that's something that's so underrated, especially within religious communities, in which, you know, you speak of this high ideal of, oh, you know, we don't care about what others think of us. And sure, like I actually respect that. I actually tend to fall too much into that camp, where I kind of feel like, hey, I don't care what this person thinks of me as long as I'm doing what I think is right. But I think that it's so important. For the friend of mine who we were talking with, we were kind of sharing like, hey, sorry, we were sharing like, what is it that we want more in your life? Do you want to have, you know, a family in which you feel like, hey, I'm comfortable with where my family's at, and I want to have just a good life for them. I want to be able to, you know, let them live well, or yeah, I don't know. It was a little bit more of a kind of like a little bit of like an ethereal, not ethereal, but you know, a little bit more of like an abstract thoughts of like, hey, what comes from your dreams, or what comes from your career path? So let's say, hey, I want to have a very successful home, and you know that might look different for all of you, but let's say, you know, your ideal is to have a home that you feel comfortable in, and that you can, you know, you have a bunch of land, you have a lot of kids, you know, you name it, whatever you feel like your quote unquote ideal is. And that would kind of change your outlook on what it means for you to, you know, what you're going to pursue. Because if you if you're going to be pursuing something that is, you know, all about money, for example, and I'm not saying there's something wrong directly with this, but if you're going to be pursuing that, then, you know, you're going to, that was backwards. I guess what I mean is, like, you know, if you're going to be pursuing the dream, and that is, like, truly you would call it your dream, is to have a lot of land with a lot of family, and you want to be able to support them, have your spouse not have to work, then you're going to, you know, choose a profession, which, sure, it might be hard, even harder than some of the other stuff, and maybe you don't like it as much. But the important thing is you're making good money, because if you're making good money, then you're able to kind of live out your dreams. But if, you know, your dreams is more about, you know, what you're doing in your career, then that's going to change things a lot too. I know for myself, I mean, I'm sure for all of us, you know, we have a lot of dreams, but these are things which kind of come in different forms. You know, I have dreams that are very much so tied to my profession, and that's why, you know, I'm pursuing the direction that I am, professionally speaking. And I think that people kind of underestimate the fact of how tied your dreams should be to who you want to be. And I know that might sound like crazy simple, and it is kind of crazy simple, but I think it's so true that, like, people often forget, hey, just because, you know, I have this dream that I want to become the world's best astronaut or whatever it is, and, like, that is your dream, it's like, hey, you're gonna have to sacrifice some other things that you just won't get other places. You know, it's like, the sad reality kind of is, if you are going to pursue being the best astronaut in the world, you likely will have a very different lifestyle than someone else who's just looking to have, you know, good family life. I was watching something just this other day from, actually, I think it was just yesterday, from Michael Phelps, and it was this kind of idea that he was talking about of, you know, winning all those medals and kind of what it took him, and different speeches that he had given throughout time, his time, you know, winning all those gold medals. And he was saying, you know, most people could achieve these great things if they were just, you know, it's more a mental game. Like, if you were really just willing to put in all the hard work for it. And not to say that, you know, there's obviously other factors at play. Like, obviously there's other factors at play. I mean, you would be silly not to say that. But it's, you know, so important to realize that, yes, there's other factors at play, but those factors are so much, or so little, compared to your actual desire to do great things. And that's kind of a radical idea. You know, he said that, you know, even when he was young, like back in high school, he had to make sacrifices to, you know, he's decided, hey, I'm not gonna actually be able to go out with friends tonight because I'm gonna be working out, and I'm gonna be swimming and, you know, training for that. And just kind of thinking about that just kind of made me think, whoa, like obviously, I guess you expect Olympians to be the pinnacle of human endurance, but, like, to hear that, like, hey, even, like, in high school, this guy is grinding out, you know, these dreams that he's having, that's just so crazy to think about. And it's, you know, it's made me think a lot about, kind of, and tying back to the original thought about this kind of idea of legacy, that it's like, hey, if you want to leave a legacy on this world, if you want to, you know, be remembered as someone who was worthwhile of something, you know, this isn't going to just come from you sitting in your dorm room doing nothing. It will take hard work, it will take a lot of pain, and it probably won't be fun for the entire time. I think that my generation is just so focused on this idea of instant gratification, and this idea of, like, oh, well, I deserve this. Like, I must deserve this because, you know, I'm here and doing this or that, or I have a hard life because, man, it's tough living in an area where I can't get this or that all the time. But it's like, you know, life is gonna suck sometimes, and honestly, that's okay. I think that it's almost more exciting when life sucks a little, which sounds a little weird, but like, it's just so much more rewarding when you actually do something great in spite of your differences. And I am not one to say that I have experienced like great adversity, because I haven't. I have been incredibly blessed to be where I am, and you know, I don't want to minimize that. But I think that, you know, the little things in life that I find so much more satisfying are the moments when like you really have to work for something that you didn't really think you would have to work for. And kind of like specifically this idea of like a rather trivial thing. I remember in high school, or not high school, sorry, in college, I had a paper that I was working on that, you know, I felt decent about. I mean, obviously it wasn't the best paper I've ever written. I mean, no, but you know, I felt like, hey, I am working, you know, decently hard on this. And I had a not so lovely professor who truthfully was being a little annoying about stuff and was, you know, not really giving me what I believe to be a fair grade. And I really fought him on it. And I said like, hey, like, I really don't appreciate this idea of like kind of what's going on here. And it wasn't like, and I think, you know, to understand, like, I've had friends all throughout high school and grade school and college who would be the kind of person where they would argue with the professor for the half a point back on the test. And like, truthfully, I don't know if I've ever like argued for more points on a test outside of that single time, in which I was like, hey, I want to, you know, I really want to, I feel like I deserve this because I've worked hard, I put time into it, and this felt like this wasn't right. And the professor ended up giving me like a considerably better grade, because I think he was like, he had given me originally a, like I think ended up giving me like a D originally, and I didn't feel like that was right. I was like, I've worked very hard for this, and respectfully, like, this just wasn't, that's not at all fair. So I fought him on it. I went through points and points, and he ended up giving me the points back for it. And it was like a silly thing. Like, sure, it's super trivial because, you know, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, whoop-de-doo, you've got, you know, the slightest bit more points, because he ended up giving me, I think it was like a C plus or something like that instead of a D, which, you know, that is still something. And sure, was it that great of a difference? I mean, enough that I felt like it was worthwhile. But I think like the principle that I learned from that was something that was, you know, obviously kind of silly, and that is, hey, like, if I'm fighting for something, if I'm working and I believe in something, I'm going to find so much more satisfaction out of it than I will if, you know, the teacher just given me, you know, a C and I just sat there and thought, well, it's good enough, you know, it's passing, so I think we're going to be fine. But that wasn't at all the case. And it's, you know, obviously pretty simple to feel like, oh, sorry, I'm just figuring out controls here as well. You know, it's obviously pretty simple to feel like, oh, I'm just, I don't know, doing what I do, and I'm just going to kind of accept that. And there's, again, nothing wrong with being comfortable in your own skin and being comfortable with this idea of who you are. But there will be times, guaranteed, that you will have to make decisions and have to push for these things which aren't ideal and are harder. And I think that that's kind of the thing that was on my mind when I was thinking about legacy and all these kind of ideas of like, hey, when I die, like, who do I want to be remembered as? Do I want to be remembered as someone who, you know, is wealthy, drove cool cars? Or do I want to be remembered as someone who was, you know, caring? Or do I not really care how I'm remembered, and I want my legacy to be just for my family? Because that's also, like, super viable, and there's for sure nothing wrong with that. But I think that people get too comfortable in this idea that they will become someone and without any work, So they kind of live their lives, do what they want to do, and when push comes to shove, things don't go their way, and then they complain about it. And I think that's just such a sad way to live. That, hey, yeah, things might be hard, things might not go your way, but that's no reason to, be angry. In fact, that's the reason to excel. You look at someone like, going back to, Michael Phelps, who was, the greatest American athlete probably ever, in terms of at least, what he did in terms of the Olympic sports and the name that he has. I mean, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe that no one has ever achieved more gold medals than Michael Phelps has. And that is a feat worth celebrating, especially when it comes at such a high cost. And I think that's something that we shouldn't shy away from. That, yeah, life might have its high costs, but if it's at the cost, if it's that cost is for legacy, man, that seems worth it. That really does seem worth it. Because, man, imagine being immortalized as someone who pushed through adversity and was willing to do something that was difficult, and they were better for it. I don't know. I think that is something that's so much more admirable than this idea of like, hey, we don't need to worry about what people think of us. Because yes, we don't need to worry about what people think of us, but we should be worried about the mark we leave on this world. So that's a little bit of a random thoughts that I've been thinking about recently. And, while a lot of these might seem, trivial or silly, and they are trivial in the grander scheme of things, because at the end of the day, we just need to be living our lives and, trying to do the best possible. But I think, if the end of our lives comes sooner than we think, then aren't we so glad that we thought about about what our life would mean to us at that point? I know I have people very close to me who don't like thinking about death and thinking about, what happens when we die. And I get that. it's not a lovely thought. It's not a fun thought. But I think, when push comes to shove, those are things we need to think about and be cognizant of, to understand that, hey, life is fragile, and that's what makes it beautiful. And we need to focus on what we're doing now and the footprints that we leave behind. And yeah, I think that's kind of my hope for myself and for all of us, all of you guys watching too, is that we can focus a little bit more on what we're doing now and how that makes our dreams come true, and more specifically, what legacy that leaves behind. So I hope you enjoy kind of just some more casual gameplay and a little bit of just some time to chat and hang out, and hopefully catch you guys on the other side.